Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our new video. But before we start, please consider giving us a like, as it will help the video reach more people. When I was 14, I had a really good friend named Matt. His family lived in a place that was far from the city, near the corner where two roads meet, and there were lots of fields with corn around. Their backyard had a wooden fence and a barn where they kept things for their garden. But what made it special was that the barn had a second floor with a balcony. Matt and I turned it into our hangout spot, and in the summer, we would bring electricity up there and camp out. Usually there were about 6 to 8 of us, and we just had a great time together. But instead of staying inside the barn all night, we liked to go outside. We would walk on the country roads at night, or we would go through the cornfields and follow the creeks. It might sound like it would be boring, but we always had a great time. We loved going out at night when there was nobody else around. We would turn off our flashlights and let our eyes get used to the dark. We didn't have to worry about cars or other people, because we always went out in groups of 6 to 8 friends. Plus, the farmers in the area said it was okay for us to walk through their fields. One night in the fall, after we got tired of playing video games for hours, we decided to go for a walk in the fields nearby. It was around 11 p.m. when we made this decision, so we grabbed a couple of flashlights and set off. It was a pleasant, cool night. The moon was just a tiny sliver, and the sky was clear with no clouds. It was a perfect night. We walked through the first field, laughing and having a great time. But our happiness quickly turned into fear. There was a creek in a low area between 2 fields, and we followed it, getting farther and farther from Matt's house. By this time, we had been walking for about an hour and a half, and it was getting close to 12:30 a.m. We decided we would walk a bit more and then head back, which turned out to be a decision we all regretted. While we were walking along the creek, we saw something that looked like a tree stump on the other side, far ahead in the field, maybe about 20 feet away from the creek. It was strange because we had gone on this walk many times before, and there was never a tree or a stump in that field. As we got more curious, we decided to go closer to it. We had about 100 feet to go to reach the creek. The first 2 friends, Chris and Mike, jumped over the creek. Just as Matt was about to jump, something really scary happened. It was strange because we had gone on this walk many times before, and there was never a tree or a stump in that field. As we got more curious, we decided to go closer to it. The stump moved. I quickly said, "Wait, it just moved." And then it stood up. We could see the shape of a person standing in the field, even though there was nothing around for miles. We all froze in fear. Chris and Mike jumped back to our side of the creek, and we slowly started to back away, keeping our eyes on the figure. It stood there for what felt like a very long time, maybe a minute, and then suddenly it started running towards us on the other side of the creek. We turned around immediately and ran as fast as we could away from the creek, heading towards the road that led to Matt's house. We could barely see it in the dark, but we were afraid it might jump the creek and catch up to us. The adrenaline was pumping, and my feet were moving so fast that it felt like I was floating. As we got close to Matt's house, we saw that the figure had stopped in the field, and we could just barely make out its shape. We ran to the back of Matt's house and went straight up to our hangout spot in the barn, locking the doors behind us. We all let out a big sigh of relief, knowing we were safe in the barn. We were still pretty scared, and couldn't believe that there was someone acting so strange out there in the field at night. We started to calm down a bit, but we were too scared to leave the barn, so when we needed to use the bathroom, we just peed off the balcony. As the night went on, it got to be around 2:30 a.m., and Mike went outside to go to the bathroom. But he came rushing back in less than 10 seconds later, looking really scared and pale. He said he saw someone in the neighbor's backyard. At that moment, we all got really worried. Why was this person following us? Why were they so determined to find us? What did they want? We quietly went down the stairs and reached the door. We didn't know where that person was, so we had two choices: wait and hope he didn't find us, or make a run for the house. We all agreed that we'd be safer in the house with a strong deadbolt lock than in the barn with a small lock that could easily be broken. So, we ran to the house with the house key in hand, hoping we wouldn't drop it along the way. After we all got inside through the back door, we stood there in silence, listening. We heard the gate to the fence creak open. We waited, but there was silence after that. Slowly, we moved through the house, trying to be as quiet as possible. Matt went to his parents' room, and the rest of us stayed in the kitchen, looking out the window into the backyard, but it was too dark to see anything. We woke up Matt's parents and told them everything. They quickly called the police. While we were on the phone with the police, we could hear something really loud and scary, like something destroying the barn. We all hid in the living room, hoping that the person wouldn't break into the house before the police arrived. After what felt like a very long time, the police finally came and went into the backyard. But the person who had been after us had disappeared. The barn door was broken, and the upstairs area was a mess, like a tornado had passed through. What was even creepier was that the handle of the back door to the house had been smashed. We were so grateful for the strong deadbolt lock on the door, or who knows what might have happened to us. After that scary night, we never went back up to the barn, never took nighttime walks, and avoided those fields. Matt's family moved away a few years later, and I've never gone back to that area. They never found the person who was after us, and we never saw his face. I think about it a lot, and it always sends shivers down my spine knowing he was never caught. A few years ago, when I was around 20 years old, I worked part-time at a Subway restaurant in my hometown, which was just about 10 minutes from my home. Most of the time, I worked in the evenings when the restaurant was getting ready to close. I usually worked 3 to 4 days a week. We closed at 9 p.m., and after around 7 p.m., it would become very quiet. Often, only one of us would work during the last hour. Also, we didn't have enough staff to cover all the shifts. One night, I worked from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m., and it was a pretty normal workday. I made sandwiches for customers, took my break, cleaned the floors, and then helped more customers. I saw a lot of people coming in and out of the store every day. Some people came to the restaurant often, and I kind of recognized their faces. But mostly, I didn't remember many people. But one night, there was a guy who came in and sat down. He hung around for a while, and for some reason, he seemed a bit odd to me. Then after a while, he came up to order something. He stayed for a long time, to the point where it was almost time for me to leave. The restaurant became very quiet, and he was the only customer inside. I think he stayed there for about 2 hours straight. The guy looked pretty average. Not too tall, brown hair, and he wore glasses. Then finally, he got up and left. In the next few weeks, I saw him a couple more times, but he didn't stay as long as the first time. It was a bit strange because sometimes he would just stand around when the restaurant was busy during dinner. He would sit at a table, but I didn't see him order anything on those occasions. It wasn't too unusual, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was creepy. One night, I was working the closing shift with my coworker Jen. When we finished closing, Jen went home, and I stayed behind to do some cleaning. After locking up the restaurant, I walked out to my car in the parking lot, and it was the only one in the parking lot. So after I got inside, I took out my phone to text my mom that I was heading home. While I was looking at my phone, I saw something from the corner of my eye. I looked up and saw someone walking in the parking lot. It was a guy I had seen at the Subway before. He was far away on the other side of the parking lot, but he was coming toward my car. When I saw him getting closer and closer, I quickly put my car in reverse, backed out, and drove away from the parking lot. The guy seemed like he was trying to reach my car, but I didn't know why. He really made me feel uneasy, but thankfully, I didn't see him the next day at work. Several nights later, I was closing the restaurant again. After a long day of work, it was time to lock up. I was alone once more, and after locking the restaurant and cleaning up, it was time for me to leave. But, as I approached the door, just before I was going to open it, I suddenly saw that guy again. I could only see his head, and he seemed to be hiding just around the corner from the door, where I couldn't see him. But I noticed him when he leaned over to peek inside. I got startled, stepped back, and moved a few steps away from the door. Suddenly, the guy rushed to the door and tried to open it. Luckily, I hadn't unlocked it, so he couldn't get in. Then, he moved to the side where I couldn't see him anymore. Subway has big windows, so I could see most of the parking lot, but there was a part to the right where he could hide without me seeing him. So quickly I called my mom and told her what was happening. She said she was coming, and if I saw the man again, I should call the police right away. Since we lived nearby, my mom arrived in about 10 minutes, and I didn't see the man during that time. When she got there, she called me on the phone. She told me that when she pulled into the parking lot, she saw a man standing at the side. When her car's headlights shone on him, he ran into the nearby woods next to the parking lot. I left the store, ran to my car, and followed my mom back home. After that, I made up my mind to stop working at Subway. I don't know who that guy was, but I haven't seen him since then.